All right, so for those of you who are joining our recording, welcome. This is the Children's Diabetes Foundation April Support Group. Here I am Sydney, I'm the Community Engagement Manager. I manage all of our support groups. Here we have Matt Todd with us. Oh, and we have someone else who I'm gonna let in. I'll wait for her to join and then do my little introduction.
Great.
For the support groups, I always like to say that none of us are medical professionals, and if you have any medical questions, that should be discussed between you and your doctor. Hi, is that you, Pat? Pat, can you hear us? All right, well, Matt, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself and kind of start talking about your life and your life story.
Oh boy, no pressure. My name is Matt Todd, and I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at age 12. Um, I was lucky enough to be able to go to the Barbara Davis Center right out of the chutes. Um, my first doctor. I walked in, it was Peter Chase, and I had Robert Slover, and really one of the best care teams I could ever ask for. I guess I started off usually like everyone. I don't know about nowadays, but I started off on shots, and kind of through the natural progression, after 2 years of shots, I went on to an insulin pump. Um, I know typically the age, I think, is a little older now. I was 14 years old with a pump back then. This would have been probably 1998 or so. So the pump tech wasn't the best. It was still kind of coming along. And trying to manage through that as a middle schooler, and being thrown into it a little bit later and being a new teenager was probably not the best. There were plenty of phone calls, to Barbara Davis Center asking how much insulin I should give for entering a donut eating contest or something like that, that really probably I shouldn't have done. Um, and Going through middle school and entering high school, I became much more active in sports, and I didn't want to let it affect my lifestyle. And I was actually on a canoe and kayak whitewater team all through high school, and was able to successfully manage the pump, take it off, put it in a watertight box, do a day's worth of paddling, reconnect, check blood sugars, and started climbing 14ers and took that pump everywhere that it probably shouldn't have been at that time. I know the newer pumps are a lot better off withstanding things like that. But I was one of the first to trial the new Medtronic CGM at the time. And I think somewhere I still have a few of those sensors, but they were much, much worse than they are today. That was, exciting new promises for the possibility of a CGM and it linking up with your insulin pump, and kind of the first steps to an automatic pancreas, even though we kind of realize that today is something that's very possible, and they've started to implement quite a bit, which I'm really glad to have contributed to that process. Even though it was, a painful one back then, they've definitely come a long way, and I'm kind of proud to be a part of that. Getting into high school, I was the lead engineer for a rocket science group, and we wound up, it was my proposal, we used cartridges out of the insulin pump to grow crystals in outer space. So we built a contraption to hold 4 insulin pump reservoirs, and we sent it to about 170 miles altitude at the White Sands Missile Range and attempted to grow crystals in zero gravity. It was a science experiment. After that, I went on to college, or to try college, rather, I will admit. I was awarded the Charlotte Tucker Scholarship in 2002. And after the first year being away from home completely, it did not work out well with the diabetes. And ultimately, after that first year, my family moved to Las Vegas anyway. And I wound up losing the ability to have access to the Barbara Davis Center. And in hindsight, it would have been well worth the travel. Las Vegas is not known for great hospitals, and I just could not find an endocrinologist there that could handle type 1 diabetes or an insulin pump. They wanted to try me back on metformin, see if maybe I've transitioned to a type 2. They really didn't know anything about type 1. And leaving the Barbara Davis Center was probably my biggest mistake back then. And it would have been worth annual, semi-annual visits at the minimum to try to manage the diabetes. The first time I was ever hospitalized in the ICU with DKA was in college. I never had to go back for that. It was kind of a lesson learned and something not to do, but it was an insulin pump that the IV pulled out overnight and I didn't know it and just kept sleeping away. And come morning, I had problems. Blood sugar was unreadable, and it was time for a trip to the hospital, and found out it was a whole lot more serious than I thought it was. Because you always have the doctors telling you, oh, it's very, very serious, but you don't really believe it until it's happened to you once. And then you realize how quickly things can shift. And it's definitely worth taking better care of, having a few years of experience behind me. Let's see. After I moved to Vegas, I joined a 5-year apprenticeship program because I liked engineering and I liked working with my hands at the same time. So I became a union electrician, and working in the field in 110-degree heat with an insulin pump is probably not the best thing on the insulin. It worked, but not perfectly, certainly. So blood sugars were kind of all over the place. I was always afraid. Without CGM technology back then, I was really afraid of getting low blood sugar on a job site and passing out somewhere and getting in trouble, getting hurt, walking off, the 40th floor of a high rise. And out in Las Vegas, it's all big buildings and high rises and new casinos. And the opportunity to get hurt was fairly substantial. After continuing to work out in Las Vegas for many years, one of the desert projects I was on, I started to go blind out in the desert. And it turns out I did not, or I guess I didn't do as many eye appointments as I thought were necessary because I did not have an endocrinologist out there. My primary care isn't going to recommend all these specialties, and maybe you should see a nephrologist at least once or twice a year, get your eyes checked more. And ultimately, I wound up having severe retinopathy in all 4 quadrants of both eyes. And finally, the blood vessels ruptured, and I went blind in one eye as it filled up with blood. So I had to have vitrectomies. Ultimately, they both wound up bleeding out within about a year of each other. And I had full vitrectomies in both eyes to restore my vision. And I got incredibly lucky, and combined today I'm back to close to 2020. I have lost a little bit of color depth, but I'll take what I can get. It's probably better than it was in high school because I didn't have glasses, I didn't get checked. And it's definitely something people need to continue to do. Um, I guess kind of getting up to about 2016, I started to develop signs of kidney disease, but I didn't know this at the time. My feet were always swollen, and I would say, well, I work construction, I'm wearing boots all day, it's probably a normal thing. And then once it started to work its way up, my knees would be swollen all day. And I was like, it's probably a construction thing, just keep going. Um, but finally, one of my doctors had the common sense to say, let's get you in to an endocrinologist, let's see how things are going. And by about January of 2017, when I saw the endocrinologist, we did a whole panel of lab work, and I was already a stage 4 for kidney disease. And this wasn't the greatest news I could have received. So it kind of plunged me into a lot of emotional complications because I knew where this was going. And it was another thing, you think it can't happen to you, only old people, wind up on dialysis. And I can remember as a kid, doctors would say, if you don't take care of it, it'll take your kidneys and you'll wind up on a dialysis machine. But I thought it's not possible. I'm too young for this, but it's not. It can certainly happen to anyone that's not in perfect control of their diabetes. And at that point, I decided to get a therapy dog to kind of help me with the stresses of dealing with this. And honestly, I could have used more support earlier, because now it seemed like the whole world was closing in on me and I had nowhere out. And I also started to develop what's called gastroparesis. And it's not super common, but with long-term uncontrolled diabetes, it's basically a paralysis of the muscles in your stomach. So you stop digesting and you have to go on a special low fiber diet, things that digest very easily, like applesauce, no apples, things that are already halfway there, almost like baby food. But you wind up throwing up all the time. It's absolutely miserable, and there really is no cure to it. They do have a couple medications that can treat it, but one of the more effective ones, and even then marginally effective, was not available in the United States. So I tried that venture. I went to Canada to try to get it. That had little to no effect. About the only other step from there would have been installing a pacemaker type device in my stomach to help it continue to digest food. And I've talked to a few people that knew patients with gastroparesis or family members with it, and it's something that most people can't get rid of. It takes a lot of lives, and usually it's the result of just years of poor control. But with that comes the kidney issues and everything else. And by about June of 2017, I went into the hospital not feeling well and found out, I guess what led to that was I was having headaches all the time, and I didn't know why. And I didn't know what a normal blood pressure should be. And with our union, we had a nurse coordinator, and I called her up and, what's a normal blood pressure? Should I get seen? Should I schedule a doctor's appointment? Well, do you have a blood pressure cuff? I do. What is it reading? 220, 230 over 110. Like, should I think about an appointment? She said no. You need to hang up the phone and you need to go to the hospital now. I still thought that. I was like, no, I'm fine. It's just a headache. Come to find out, I went to the hospital, couple of CT scans, x-rays, and I got a very quick visit from the neurosurgeon. And they said, Matt, you've got something that looks like a brain bleed, and it is potentially life-threatening. So we have to make the decision to do a CT with full iodine contrast, or this, could take your life. And I had to make the decision to go ahead with that, even though I had little to poor kidney function, knowing what those consequences could have been. And that's basically what killed my kidneys. I went from a kidney percentage, maybe 40% capacity, down to about 11 within probably a day of having that done. And I stayed in the ICU there at the hospital for a full month. Finally, I was able to regain enough kidney capacity to leave the hospital, and we tried every medication possible to keep blood pressures down, to keep to try to keep me urinating, to keep those kidneys working as well as they could. But ultimately, come August, we had to make the decision to go on dialysis to try to help that out. I would never wish dialysis on my worst enemy. It's really, really difficult to survive physically and emotionally. And I had no idea what I was getting into. But at this point, I was unable to work, and I thought anyway, it was the beginning of the end for me. So just all these burdens together, I'm unable to pay my bills. I had to give my car back to the bank. I had to declare bankruptcy because, it was actually my bank that told me that. They said, you don't know if you're ever going to work again. You may never work, and you have bills that need to get paid. You've got to do what you've got to do. And being as proud as I am, it killed me to do it, but I knew it was something I had to do just to go down this road. And it's been a long time to recover from that. But it definitely, there's a lot of other things that go along with the transplant that you don't think about that affect your daily life, and ultimately wind up being great hardships for not only you, but your entire family and everyone that loves you and cares for you. From then, I guess, I was on dialysis for 2 years, almost to the week. And I kind of wonder about that timing. It took me about 6 months to get on a transplant list, and they said, we can do the kidneys and it'll be about 5 years on the wait list. Because a pancreas would benefit you and the longevity of your kidneys, we feel a kidney pancreas or KP transplant would be the best choice. And strangely enough, the wait list is about 18 months for that. And I said, all right, you're telling me I can get rid of diabetes forever and get a kidney in about a third of the time? Absolutely, I'll take it. That 2 years of dialysis was very rough, and it drains the life out of you. You're basically on life support every other day, sitting in a chair for 4 to 5 hours, getting your blood pumped through. And just trying to survive that emotionally is incredibly difficult. And I'm glad for what few friends stuck by me, and for my parents for standing by me that whole time. Because I know a lot of people don't have that support network, and a lot of people would give up before then, on me or on the system or waiting. And I know it was frustrating for them. It's got to be incredibly hard to watch your child or a loved one go through it. Um, Even though I was suffering a lot, I didn't realize how it affected others until later, when I would talk to friends and they said, we thought you were going to die. It's the last time we thought we were ever going to see you. Um, and as the years went by on dialysis, one day I was just passed out on the dialysis machine trying to get what little sleep I could, and the phone rings, and usually I ignore everything, but I looked down and it was a Phoenix number. And I guess I should have said this earlier. I was on the transplant list with Mayo Clinic in Phoenix, and I was like, well, I'll see what they want. And sorry, it's still kind of emotional to me to relive that day, but you never expect it. They always tell you, like, have a go bag by the door. They could call you anytime for a transplant. You lose hope. You can never think it'll happen. And they called up. This is a nurse coordinator with Mayo Clinic, and we feel we have a match for you. And I was just speechless. They're like, are you still there? Are you still there? Did we lose you? Almost. Like, I didn't know what to say. And definitely being in a dialysis center with a much older crowd that didn't have as promising of hopes for a transplant, it was like no one expects to see that call while you're on a dialysis machine in there. So it got everyone all excited, and they ended my dialysis early. And at that point, we had about 4 to 6 hours of the clock running to get me down to Mayo Clinic and drive me there as fast as possible. And it's about a 4.5 hour drive from Vegas. So we had to find some place to board my dog instantly, throw everything in the car, and get out the door. Made it down there. They prep everything. They get you ready to go. Putting in the biggest IVs they can possibly find, getting you ready for a major surgery. And right now you're just standing by waiting, and the doctor comes in, looks down at the floor and says, I'm sorry, but this one just didn't work out. And that's what's called a dry run. And they mention them when they first put you on the list, but they don't tell you how emotional and how taxing they can be. I went through 3 dry runs before actually getting my transplant. And it turns out with the pancreas, it's a very difficult organ to transplant, and it has to be in perfect condition. So the first one, they didn't know it until they went in and they discovered it had pancreatitis. The second one was slightly too fatty. And the third one, they just didn't like the look of it. It looked like it might have had a trauma. It just didn't look perfect to the team. And they said, honestly, it's not worth the risk. We'll have to wait for the next one. And at that point, I start losing hope, and, going through that roller coaster every time. And I was lucky enough to be a part of a family that we had the money to drop what we were doing at the time and everyone rush out to Mayo, and go through this whole process. My parents had to get hotels, and just be able to drop what they were doing at the time, because they were the only ones able to take care of me and do this. Finally, we decided, my dad would stay back in Vegas and my mother and I would go down to Phoenix to rent a house. And we got everything we needed. We moved down there, and with boxes everywhere in the house still, probably after the 3rd day after we were there, I got another phone call at 4:30 in the morning. And they said, Matt, this is one of the best organs we have ever seen, and we think you need to take this offer. Can you be here in 4 to 5 hours? I said, I can do better than that. I'm about 30 minutes away. Um, so all the organs are rated on a scale of 1 to 100 on health. It's a KDPI number. And typically a very good healthy organ would be in the 20s or 30s. 50 would be okay, but maybe you want to wait. This one had a KDPI value of 1. They said, you never see organs like this. This is perfect. You need to get down here. So I got ready again, went down, went through the whole rigmarole again. And this time they actually wheeled me out of the room and brought me down to the OR. And it was probably about a 6.5 hour procedure. Um, it overwhelms me how many people were involved. Um, they wheel you in, there's probably 20 people, 20 to 30 in that operating room, um, waiting to save your life ultimately. And after that transplant, they said typical results, maybe 7 to 10 days, and we can discharge you and, continue outpatient care and regular monitoring. I was not quite that lucky. I was in for about 2 weeks in the hospital initially. They discharged me and I still wasn't feeling good. Still throwing up a lot, and a lot of pain. So they brought me back in to take another look. And it turns out somewhere in the process, I wound up with a bowel obstruction. So that was another emergency surgery, rushed back in to resection my intestines, because when they do that surgery, they don't actually remove your old kidneys or pancreas. They add the new organs in, nestled kind of into your pelvis, behind your intestines. And I guess that disrupted some of the intestines and caused the blockage. So after that, I was probably another month and a half in the hospital trying to get that new pancreas to play nice with everything. By the time I was discharged, it was just before Thanksgiving, and I'm about 6'4.5", 6'5" height wise, and I was down to 142 pounds. I was down to nothing. And before the surgery, with all the extra water weight and swelling, I was probably up to about 210, and had lost all of that in the hospital. Um, and I would say for a good year after that, maybe 2, 3 appointments a day at Mayo Clinic, we stayed down there getting follow-up care, adjusting medications, occasional IV therapies, bloodletting, everything that can go into adjusting basically your entire body to handle multiple organs. So it's not a shoe-in, but I will say from day one of putting that pancreas in, I never needed the insulin pump again. Never needed a drop of insulin, the day it was put in. Let's see, after that, I wound up, from the vitrectomies I had years earlier to fix my eyes. It's something you will develop cataracts from. So I did the cataract surgery while I was at Mayo, and I figured we got a clean slate. It's time, to move back to Colorado, where I was born and raised. So several years ago, I came back and, started back here. I guess to repair the fistula that I had from dialysis, I got, a few follow-up surgeries done, and I wanted to get back into the only trade I knew, which was being an electrician. But at this point, I knew working in the field is probably not the best choice. So I tried to pursue a career in project management, and finally got lucky, and a company was willing to reach out and give me a shot. And so now I'm pursuing a career in project management, still in the electrical field, trying to get back on top of things and recover from probably 7 years of extreme hardships going through a transplant, dialysis, and all the kind of end stage effects of what diabetes can do to somebody. And I have heard from a few doctors and friends, they always ask, well, how long will the pancreas transplant last? It might be temporary. You might get a couple years out of it. You might get 20 years out of it, but nobody really knows because it hasn't been done enough to give good numbers. I'm hoping it lasts for the rest of my life and I live forever, but I know that's not realistic. But I now live life a day at a time, and I realize how precious life can be, especially after something so serious that honestly, on all these conditions, I've come out at the top few percentile, and most people don't get that lucky. Today, I'm still terrified to contact my organ donors because I don't know what to say. I always, just once you've had the transplant, there's a lot of emotional issues you go through. Every time you wake up in the morning, you wonder about someone who lost their life to give you theirs almost. And you want to do better. You want to do something impressive with your life. And it always weighs on your mind because you know that somebody out there and all their loved ones, they lost something so you could keep going. And I always feel that before I contact them, I want to win a Nobel Prize, or I want to cure cancer. I want to be the one to find a cure for childhood diabetes, type 1, or something impressive. But it's never quite good enough for yourself. And I guess that's kind of where I am today.
That's amazing, Matt. Thank you so much for sharing your story. This is so valuable, and we just so appreciate you being so open with us.
Oh, you're welcome. And I figure if there's anything I can do or stories I can share that might persuade someone differently from going down my path, if I have to be the lightning rod, so someone else won't wind up on dialysis, absolutely any bit of advice or information I could give, um, I'd gladly give it to rather see someone else on dialysis and have to go through that.
And Matt, I have a couple questions set aside for you, but I wanted to open the floor up. Emily and Pat, do either of you have any questions for Matt about his story or anything?
I do. I've contacted several people about listening to this, but I realized, it was the Barbara Davis Center and these people weren't, but I think you said you were going to have it so that other people could hear it.
Yes, we are recording this, Pat, and once we are able to get it up on our website, we'll send it out so other people can listen to it.
Okay, I belong to quite a few groups, and one of them is called FK or Diabetes. These are the most negative, god-awful people I've ever been involved with. I mean, they're going to kill themselves. They're not going to eat. I think if we could get to this group with this, it would really be beautiful.
Yeah, you and I can connect a little bit later to see if we can
Okay.
get this recording.
And thank you for the comic books.
Of course, I'm glad you got them, Pat.
I need to let you know, I've been diabetic 75 years. And I'm not a perfect diabetic, but I've had quite a few friends that have had the pancreatic transplant and it didn't work. So I'm so grateful to hear your story.
Thank you. I'm glad to share it.
Yeah. I'll be sharing it with a lot of people.
I do not have any questions, but Matt, your story is definitely an amazing story, and it's one that I think everybody should hear because I think it will help a lot of people. So I appreciate you sharing, and it was great to be here tonight.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Matt, if you could give your younger self a piece of advice, what would that be?
Take it seriously.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's fine. I would say definitely take it seriously. Don't take it lightly. Um, Understand that it's not optional care. Because if you don't take care of it now, things will creep up on you later.
And Matt, earlier you said that when things got really dark that you would wish you had had more support. What kind of support would have been helpful for you back then?
I guess probably from either other type 1 diabetics or people that were more relatable. I know I had a lot of people, say, hey, whatever you need, if you need to talk. But it was always in my mind, well, they don't understand. They haven't been there. They have no idea what it's like to test your blood sugar or to go into DKA or to pass out from low blood sugar and wake up with paramedics surrounding you. Like, you just can't explain how terrifying that is to somebody.
That's such a good point.
I know from the time I was little, I always wanted to see a diabetic that was older than me to see what it had done to them. But I'm from a small town in northern Montana, and I never ever got to do that. So I'm so grateful for the support I have now, the people that understand. You could say I had a low blood sugar, a high blood sugar, this happened to me. Oh yeah, I've done that. It's nice.
Well, and Pat, it's awesome that you can be that person for someone now. They want to see someone who's older than them with diabetes, and you can be that to a lot of people now, which is really awesome.
It is. It's great.
I don't think I have any other questions. Does anyone else have anything they're wondering about? Or Matt, any other last thoughts you want to share with us?
I guess one part that I kind of forgot. I also thought amputations were kind of a joke. And over this last summer, I was out at the pool visiting my dad in Las Vegas and had a little blister on my toe. They always say, oh, check your feet. They're diabetic feet. Oh yeah, no, they're fine. That little blister can get out of control fast. And I had to have my entire big toe amputated. I didn't even know about it until I wound up in the ICU again with full-blown sepsis, September of last year.
And that was after you had the pancreas transplant, right, Matt?
It was.
And
I'm still kind of hobbling around with that, trying to figure it out. But it's, as hard as it is to listen to a doctor sometimes when you're young and invincible, they're not lying.
And you said that literally just started as a blister. So like, how did you know when to go into the doctor or anything like that? Did it get red? Did it start to hurt? Or what kind of symptoms did you start to have if it just seemed like a blister?
Because it was on the bottom of my foot and I'm so tall with long limbs and not very flexible, I was like, it's probably fine. And I don't have a lot of feeling in my feet anyway from years of neuropathy. I didn't even really realize it was there until I started to get sick. I was throwing up, I had a fever, and at that point it was the blood poisoning and sepsis setting in. And by the time I was able to get into the emergency room and, well, we're not sure what's wrong, but you have a blood infection, let's admit you. And they pulled off my socks to put hospital socks on. And the nurse steps back and she's like, I'll be right back. She'd never seen anything like that before, and my toe was black.
Oh,
And it was too late at that point, and brought a doctor in, and they went, oh wow, yeah. And I knew exactly where that was going. Back into the OR that night and woke up without a toe.
Any other last questions or last thoughts?
no, Kimmy, I'm sorry, Sydney. I'll be contacting you with a lot of names to send this to.
Sounds
I've
good.
got a meeting Thursday with a group that I know would really like it, and then I'll give you um, the other Facebook pages.
Sounds good, Pat. I'll get connected with you after this.
Okay.
I think we'll wrap things up here, but again, just want to thank everyone for joining. For anyone who wasn't able to join us in person, thank you for watching the Zoom meeting. Matt, thank you so much for sharing your time with us and for sharing your story with us. This information is so valuable, and we just really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everyone. Have a great night.
Have a
You
good
too.
night.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you too.
Goodbye.